The Ladder of Lights. Introduction. The Call to Ascent. There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the veil of the ordinary world begins to thin. You feel it, don't you? A quiet knowing, a whisper in the depths of your being, calling you towards something beyond what your eyes can see and your hands can touch. It is a feeling both ancient and urgent, a sense that this world, this reality, is but a shadow of something far greater, that you are meant for more. You have seen the signs. Perhaps you have experienced moments where time itself seemed to pause, where reality bent, revealing glimpses of a hidden order beneath the chaos. Perhaps you have felt the pull of strange synchronicities, mysterious dreams, or an unshakable sensation that your soul is remembering something it once knew. You are not alone. You are not imagining things. For centuries, mystics, sages, and seekers have spoken of a path, a sacred journey upward from darkness to light, from illusion to truth, from the heaviness of matter to the brilliance of the divine. Some called it the stairway to heaven, others Jacob's ladder, and in the teachings of the ancient Hermetic masters, it is known as the Ladder of Lights, a series of spiritual initiations, an ascent through levels of consciousness that leads to true awakening. But let me tell you something the world does not often teach. Ascension is not an escape. It is not about floating away to some distant realm. It is about transformation, an inner alchemy that turns the lead of the self into gold. The secret is not in leaving the world behind, but in mastering it, in rising within it, until you become a beacon of the very light you seek. This audiobook is a map, a guide for those who wish to remember their divine nature, reclaim their power, and rise beyond the illusions that bind them. We will explore the 7 rungs of the ladder, each one revealing a new stage of the soul's ascent. We will uncover the hidden teachings of ancient wisdom traditions, the laws that govern spiritual evolution, and the practical steps to awaken the luminous being within you. But be warned, this is not a journey for the faint of heart. To ascend is to shed illusions, to face the self with unflinching honesty, to let go of all that is false, and to embrace the eternal. The path of light is not without trials, but for those who walk it, the reward is beyond measure, a life of clarity, purpose, and union with the divine. So, if you feel the call, if your soul stirs at these words, then take a deep breath, step forward, and prepare to climb. The ladder awaits. Chapter 1. The Great Descent. The Soul's Fall into Matter. There is an ancient story whispered through the corridors of time, echoed in sacred texts and mystical traditions across the world. It is the story of a luminous being, one forged from divine essence, limitless in its wisdom and power, who in the beginning dwelled in realms of pure light, but something called it downward, a force, a necessity, an unseen law of existence itself. And so it descended, slowly at first, then faster, spiraling downward through unseen spheres, slipping further from its source. As it fell, something strange began to happen. The brilliance that once illuminated its very being started to dim. The memory of its origin, so clear and radiant, became clouded, veiled in layers of forgetfulness, and by the time it reached the lowest realm, the dense, heavy world of matter, it had forgotten almost everything. It had forgotten the harmony of the higher worlds, the music of the spheres, the infinite nature of its own soul. It had forgotten that it had ever been something more. This is not just a myth. This is our story. We too were once beings of light, not metaphorically, but in the truest sense of the word. There was a time when we existed beyond limitation, before the weight of the physical world wrapped itself around us like a second skin. But something drew us downward. Some call it the fall, some call it karma, and others call it the grand design of the universe itself. And now, here we are, bound in flesh, lost in time, caught in the illusions of a world that feels so real, so solid, that we can hardly believe there was ever anything beyond it. Yet, if we listen closely, something within us remembers. It stirs in the quiet moments, in the space between thoughts, in the longing we cannot explain. a yearning for something nameless, something vast. This longing is the soul's homesickness, the echo of a life before this life. It is the whisper of the ladder of lights, calling us to ascend once more. But before we can climb, we must first understand how we fell. The descent of the soul into matter is one of the oldest mysteries known to humankind. In the Kabbalistic tradition, it is said that before we came into this world, we existed in a state of unity, a formless oneness with the divine. In that unity there was no suffering, no separation, no illusion of I and other, only an endless ocean of being, a boundless light. But the soul, in its purity, longed for something it did not yet possess: experience, knowledge, the ability to grow, to choose, to become. And so, it entered the world of form. But there was a cost. To experience this world, the soul had to take on limitation. It had to forget its vastness, to compress itself into a body, to play by the rules of time and space. It had to learn through struggle, through contrast, through the illusion of separateness. And so the great forgetting began. This is the veil spoken of by the Gnostics, the Maya of the Vedic traditions, and the cave of shadows in Plato's philosophy. It is the dream in which we live, mistaking reflections for reality, mistaking the temporary for the eternal. The physical senses, sharp and immediate, dominate our perception, convincing us that this world of solid forms is all there is. The mind, conditioned from birth, is trained to believe in its smallness, in its mortality, in the limitations imposed by the material plane. But here lies the paradox. The very world that binds us also holds the key to our liberation. For just as the soul descended into matter, so too can it rise. The great sages have always taught that the journey downward was never meant to be permanent. The divine spark within us, though buried beneath layers of illusion, cannot be extinguished. It is waiting, dormant but powerful, ready to be awakened. And the first step in that awakening is remembering that we are not these bodies, these fleeting identities, these shifting emotions. Remembering that beyond the masks we wear, beyond the stories we tell ourselves, there is something eternal, something untouchable. The first rung of the ladder of lights is not found in temples or scriptures, but in the act of turning inward, of questioning the nature of reality itself. And so we must ask, if all we see is not the true world, then what is? There is a reason that every spiritual tradition speaks of awakening as a moment of profound shock. When the veil is lifted, even slightly, the world we once knew begins to unravel. The desires that once consumed us lose their power. The fears that once controlled us seem suddenly small, and in their place, something vast begins to emerge, a deeper knowing, an ancient memory stirring from its slumber. This is the beginning of ascension, not in the way the modern world often depicts it, not as an escape from this plane, but as a transformation within it. The soul does not leave the world behind, it learns to see it correctly. It learns to move through it with wisdom, with clarity, with the knowledge that it is not a prisoner here, but a traveler, a student, an alchemist in the process of turning lead into gold. And so we stand at the threshold. We have fallen, yes, but we are not lost. The ladder of lights is before us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with eyes to see. It is built into the fabric of our very being, woven into the breath, the heartbeat, the silent spaces between thoughts. All that remains is the first step, the willingness to remember, to seek, to rise. Are you ready? Chapter 2. The First Rung, Awakening from the Dream. It begins with a whisper, a quiet stirring in the depths of your being, so subtle that at first you may not even notice it. It is not a voice, not words in the way you have been taught to understand them, but something deeper, something ancient, a knowing, a feeling that something about this world, this life, is not as it seems. At first you may try to ignore it. You move through your days as you always have, following the rhythms dictated by the world around you. You wake, work, speak, consume, and sleep. You obey the silent rules of existence that have been laid before you, believing them to be the only truth there is. But something gnaws at the edges of your perception, a question that refuses to be silenced. Is this all there is? And then one day, something happens. Perhaps it is a moment so small it would be meaningless to anyone else. A fleeting realization, a sudden shift in perspective. You see the world just for an instant in a way you never have before. A crack appears in the fabric of reality, and through it, a different light shines. It is the first glimpse of a hidden truth, and once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. The illusion begins to waver. It is a strange and unsettling experience. The world, which once seemed so solid, so real, begins to feel thin, as though it is no longer enough to contain you. The structures of meaning that once guided you, society, ambition, material pursuits, begin to seem artificial, hollow. You start to sense that the things you have been chasing may not hold the fulfillment they once promised, and the people around you, those who still walk in the dream without question, seem distant, as though you no longer speak the same language. This is the first rung of the ladder of lights, awakening. It is the breaking of the spell, the lifting of the veil, the moment the sleeper stirs within the prison of the flesh. And though it may begin in silence, in contemplation, it is not without cost. The world does not take kindly to those who wake up. The moment you begin to see beyond the illusion fights back. Doubt creeps in, whispering that perhaps you are imagining things, that you are simply restless, that this is nothing more than the ordinary weariness of life. But somewhere deeper, beneath the layers of conditioning, you know that is not true. You know something inside you has changed. And then, just as quickly as it came, the glimpse of truth may disappear. You may fall back into the rhythm of the world, carried once again by its currents. But it is never the same. Because even if you try to forget, even if you try to silence the voice, the knowing remains. And it will return, again and again, calling you forward. The great sages have always spoken of this moment. They have called it the first awakening, the initial spark of divine remembrance. In the East, it is the first stirring of the Kundalini, the coiled serpent of consciousness that lies dormant within, waiting to rise. In Hermeticism, it is the moment one first glimpses the reality of the All, the great mind in which all things exist. The Gnostics knew it as the moment the soul begins to recognize the illusion of the material world and longs for its return to the higher realms. But this is where many falter, because, awakened, the modern world is filled with those who have glimpsed the truth but have done nothing with it. They speak of enlightenment, of higher consciousness, of cosmic knowledge, yet they remain trapped in the same patterns, the same illusions, because they have mistaken the awakening for the journey. They believe that seeing the first rung of the ladder is the same as climbing it, but to see the path is not the same as walking it, and so many turn away. They retreat back into the familiar, comforting themselves with distractions, convincing themselves that the glimpse of something greater was just a passing thought, an illusion of its own. But for those who cannot turn away, for those who feel the call of the ladder pressing against their soul, there is only one path forward, the path of commitment. To truly awaken is to question everything you have ever known. It is to strip away the falsehoods that have been woven into your mind since birth. It is to unlearn as much as it is to learn. It is to be willing to destroy the self you once believed to be real in order to find what lies beneath. And this is no small task. The mind is not easily freed. It clings to its chains because it does not know what exists beyond them. The illusion is comfortable, predictable, and safe. The ego fears its own dissolution, and so it resists the truth with all its strength. It will distract, deceive, rationalize. It will tell you that you have already awakened, that there is no further to climb, that you already understand. But the moment you believe, that is the moment you stop moving forward. True awakening is an ongoing process. It is a constant shedding of illusions, a continuous expansion of perception. It does not happen all at once, and it is not a singular event. It is a journey of many lifetimes, and each step reveals only the next. So how does one continue? The answer lies in awareness. The moment you wake up, you must train yourself to see the patterns of thought that keep you bound, to see the illusions you once took as absolute, to see the ways in which the world shapes you, influences you, and deceives you. You must become an observer of your own mind, watching the way it reacts, the way it clings, the way it fears. This is the true beginning of ascension, not in grand revelations, not in mystical visions, but in the simple act of being present, of being conscious, of being willing to ask, is this true? And the deeper you go, the more you will see. You will see how much of your identity is not truly yours but was given to you by others. You will see how many of your desires were planted in you, how many of your fears were taught to you, how much of your suffering is self-created. And once you see, you cannot unsee. This is the first step toward freedom. It is not an easy path. There will be moments when you long to close your eyes again, when the weight of the truth feels too heavy to bear. But there will also be moments of profound clarity, of boundless peace, of knowing beyond words. And in those moments you will understand why the journey is worth it. You will know that the world is not what it seems. And more importantly, you will know that you are not what you have been told you are. You are something vast, something luminous, something eternal. You are not the dream. You are the one who is waking up. Chapter 3. The Second Rung, Purification by Fire. Awakening is the first rupture in the veil, the first crack in the illusion of the world. But to awaken is not enough. To see the path is not the same as walking it. And so, for those who dare to step forward, the journey enters its next phase, one of cleansing, of purification, of fire. For fire is the great transformer. It does not preserve. It does not make gentle alterations. It devours. It reduces. It refines. What is false is burned away, and what remains is what was always true. Every great tradition has known this. Before the soul may ascend, it must be purified. The dross must be burned away, the burdens shed, the attachments severed. It is a painful process because we do not yet know how tightly we have wrapped ourselves in the things that weigh us down. At first, the seeker does not recognize the fire for what it is. It begins subtly, as an unease, a discomfort with the world as it is. The things that once brought pleasure now feel empty, dull. The old ambitions lose their shine. The conversations that once felt lively now seem shallow and lifeless. The people who once felt like home may now feel distant, as though they are moving in a different current of reality altogether. This is the first test, and many will turn back here. They will convince themselves that it is better to remain as they were. The fire frightens them, for it demands sacrifice. It demands that they loosen their grip on all that is familiar, all that is comfortable. It whispers to them of transformation, but transformation requires destruction. The self they have built, the one crafted from the expectations of the world, from inherited beliefs and borrowed desires, must begin to dissolve. But for those who persist, the fire grows hotter. It begins to reveal the hidden weights they carry. Old wounds buried deep rise to the surface. The scars of childhood, the echoes of past pain, the voices of those who once told them they were not enough, these too must be faced. For one cannot ascend while carrying the burdens of the past. These shadows must be acknowledged, accepted, and released, and so the fire does what it must. It burns away resentment, forcing the seeker to confront the grudges they have held onto, the bitterness they have nurtured. It strips them of their excuses, exposing the ways in which they have deceived themselves, the ways in which they have clung to suffering as a form of identity. It forces them to see the truth, that much of what has bound them was never external but internal. This is the true nature of purification. It is not an escape from suffering, but an encounter with it. It is looking into the mirror of the soul and seeing clearly, for the first time, the full weight of what must be let go. And yet even in the midst of the fire, there is something else, a clarity, a lightness that was never there before. For as the illusions are burned away, something real begins to emerge. It was always there, hidden beneath the layers of falsehood, but now it can be seen. The seeker begins to understand that they are not their suffering. They are not the traumas they have endured, nor the limitations they once accepted as truth. They are something deeper, something untouchable, And the more they release, the more they feel it, the presence of the divine within them, no longer buried beneath the weight of the past. This is the stage where many spiritual traditions introduce ritual purification, water fasting, sacred bathing, the renunciation of worldly attachments. These are not mere symbolic acts, but reflections of a deeper truth. For as the outer world is cleansed, so too is the inner. The seeker begins to crave simplicity, silence, and space. They feel the need to remove themselves from distractions, to separate from the noise of the world, not out of fear, but because they can now feel how much of it is unnecessary. And so they begin to reshape their lives, not through force, but through alignment. They no longer seek to numb their emotions, to silence the voice within them that urges them forward. They surrender to the fire, trusting that whatever is burned away was never truly theirs to begin with. It is in this stage that the concept of the dark night of the soul often appears, for as the seeker purifies, they may experience a profound emptiness. The old self is dissolving, but the new self has not yet fully emerged. It is a space between worlds, a void where nothing feels certain. The divine presence, once glimpsed so vividly, may seem distant, as though it has retreated beyond reach. But this, too, is part of the fire. It is the final test before the transformation is complete. What the seeker does not yet realize is that they are already ascending. Every old belief that crumbles, every attachment that is released, every wound that is healed, each of these is a step upward on the ladder of lights. The purification is not punishment but preparation, a refinement, so that when the time comes, they will be light enough to rise. And then, one day, without warning, something shifts. It may be subtle, imperceptible at first. A moment of stillness, a breath that feels lighter than the rest, a sense of peace, not born from external circumstances, but from within. The fire has not consumed them, it has transformed them. And though they may not yet understand the full depth of what has changed, they know one thing with certainty: they are no longer the same. The second rung of the ladder has been climbed, the burdens have been shed, and now for the first time the seeker is ready to step into the light. Chapter 4. The third rung, the fire of transformation. There comes a moment in the journey when the seeker realizes that awakening is not enough, that purification is not enough. The veil has been lifted, the illusions burned away, but something within still feels incomplete, unfinished. It is not enough to simply see the truth or to strip away the layers of falsehood. A new self must be forged, and for that, the fire must return, not to destroy, but to transform. This is the third rung of the ladder of lights, the fire of transformation. Unlike the purging flames of purification, which strip away what no longer serves, this fire is different. It is the fire of the alchemist's forge, the crucible where base metals are turned into gold, where the soul is transmuted into something greater. It is the fire of the phoenix, the sacred blaze that consumes the old self so that a new divine being may rise from the ashes. This fire does not come gently. It arrives as trials, as challenges that shake the very foundations of the self. Everything that remains untested, every belief, every conviction, every lingering attachment, is thrown into the furnace to be melted, reshaped. It is a time of chaos, uncertainty, and profound inner conflict. And yet, hidden within the struggle, there is something miraculous taking place, for what is happening is not destruction, but refinement. The seeker, now stripped of illusions, now free from the burdens of the past, begins to see the raw material of their own being. They see, perhaps for the first time, that they are not bound by fate, not shackled by old identities. They are something fluid, something malleable. They are the alchemist and the metal, the sculptor and the stone. They are becoming. And this is where fear arises. For transformation is not merely change, it is an obliteration of the familiar. It is stepping into the unknown with no assurance of what lies ahead. The old self clings desperately to its last fragments, whispering warnings, pleading to return to the comfort of what was once known. The seeker is faced with a choice: to remain where they are, half-formed, or to surrender fully to the fire and emerge as something new. Many hesitate, some turn back. But for those who take the step, something extraordinary happens. The fire, which seemed at first like suffering, like hardship, reveals itself as the great teacher. It is through the trials, through the struggles, through the breaking and the reshaping, that the soul discovers its own strength. The seeker learns that they are not fragile, that they are not at the mercy of the world, that within them there is a power that cannot be touched by circumstance, that cannot be dimmed by fear. This is the birth of divine will. The great mystics have always spoken of this stage as the forging of the solar body, the true self that exists beyond the limitations of the material world. In alchemy, it is the stage of albedo, the whitening, where the purified soul is illuminated with divine fire. In the Kabbalistic tradition, it is the ascent into Tifereth, the heart of the tree of life, where the lower and higher selves merge into one. It is the moment when the seeker ceases to be merely human and steps into something greater, and with it comes an understanding. Transformation is not given, it is claimed. The seeker realizes that no one will hand them enlightenment. No divine hand will reach down and pull them upward. The ladder of lights is climbed by will, by action, by the conscious decision to step forward again and again, no matter how fierce the fire. And so, they begin to act. Not from fear, not from desire, but from something purer, something unshaken by the changing winds of the world. They act because they are. No longer seeking approval, no longer ruled by doubt, no longer shackled by the weight of past wounds. They move forward with a clarity that can only come from one who has walked through fire and emerged whole. This is the moment of true power. Not power over others, not the illusion of control, but the power of presence, of mastery over the self. The seeker no longer reacts to the world. They shape it. Their words, once uncertain, now carry weight. Their actions, once hesitant, now ripple outward, affecting everything they touch. The fire has refined them, and in its heat they have become a force unto themselves. And then, something unexpected happens. The world responds. The external reality, which once seemed indifferent, begins to shift. Synchronicities align. Doors open. The right people appear at the right time. Opportunities that once seemed impossible become effortless. It is as if the universe itself has been waiting for this moment, waiting for the seeker to step into their own power. But the greatest revelation of all is this: the fire was never an enemy. It was never there to harm, to punish, or to destroy. It was the soul's own creation, the necessary catalyst for its own evolution. And now, standing at the threshold of the next rung, the seeker understands. They are no longer the person they once were. The self that entered the fire has been left behind, and in its place something new has risen, something luminous, something unstoppable, and the climb continues. Chapter 5. The Fourth Rung, Illumination. There comes a point in the journey when the fire has done its work, the illusions have been burned away, the false identities stripped down to nothing, and the seeker stands on the edge of something vast and unknown. The weight of the past no longer binds them, and the fears that once held them captive now seem like distant echoes of another life. And then, without warning, the light appears. It does not come as a blinding flash or a sudden burst of revelation. No, it emerges slowly, like the first glow of dawn creeping over the horizon. At first it is only a subtle shift, a heightened awareness, a deepening stillness. The world begins to feel different, more vivid, more alive. Colors seem richer and sounds more resonant. The air itself feels charged with something unseen, something luminous. The seeker begins to notice patterns, synchronicities that were once dismissed as coincidence. Thoughts seem to ripple outward, shaping reality in ways that defy logic. The boundary between the inner world and the outer world begins to blur, and for the first time, the seeker truly understands. Everything is connected. This is illumination, the fourth rung of the ladder of lights. It is not mere knowledge, not something learned from books or spoken by teachers. It is direct experience, an awakening into the deeper reality that has always existed beneath the surface. It is the moment when the mind ceases to be the sole ruler of perception and the heart begins to see. For in this state, everything pulses with meaning. The wind carries whispers of forgotten truths. The rhythm of the stars echoes within the soul. The seeker no longer moves through the world as an outsider, but as part of its very fabric. The separation between self and existence dissolves, and with it, the last remnants of the old way of seeing. And yet it is not euphoria, not in the way the uninitiated might imagine. There is joy, yes, but not the fleeting happiness that comes and goes like the tides. This is something deeper, quieter, a peace that does not depend on circumstance, a knowing that cannot be shaken. The seeker realizes that they are no longer seeking, that what they have been searching for has been here all along, hidden beneath the noise of the mind. And with this realization, fear disappears. For what is there to fear when one has seen beyond the veil? Death is no longer an end, but a doorway, a passage into the next stage of existence. Suffering is no longer a punishment but a teacher, guiding the soul toward its own unfolding. The chaos of the world no longer disturbs the inner stillness, for the seeker now sees the pattern, the harmony beneath the seeming disorder. This is what the sages have attempted to describe, but have never been able to do so, and what the mystics have always talked about. It is the sacred geometry woven into the fabric of the universe, the cosmic symphony of the spheres, and the Tao permeating everything. It is the knowledge that everything is an expression of the same divine power and that there is no separation. And in this light, something even greater emerges: compassion. Not the shallow pity of one who looks down upon another, but a profound, unshakable love for all things. The seeker no longer sees enemies, no longer judges those who are still asleep in the dream. Instead, there is only understanding, an awareness that all beings are on the path, each at their own stage of awakening. Even those who harm, even those who dwell in darkness, are simply lost in the illusion, just as the seeker once was. And so, rather than resentment, there is only love. A love so vast, so unconditional, that it encompasses all of existence. This is the beginning of true mastery, for now, the seeker does not merely know the truth, they embody it. Their presence alone begins to shift the energy around them. Their words carry a different weight. Their thoughts ripple outward, affecting the world in ways beyond ordinary comprehension. They become a living conduit of the divine, a walking embodiment of the light they have found. And yet, even in this moment of illumination, a question arises. Is this the end? For the seeker, the answer is clear: no. For as high as they have climbed, as much as they have seen, they know there is still further to go. The ladder of lights extends beyond even this, beyond illumination, beyond understanding. There is still more to become, more to integrate, more to give. And so, with eyes now open, with a heart now overflowing, the seeker prepares for the next step. The path does not end here, it never does. Chapter 6. The Fifth Rung. Unity with the Divine. There is a moment when the light ceases to be something external, something observed, and instead becomes the very essence of being. It is no longer a presence outside the self, no longer a force to be reached toward or glimpsed in fleeting moments of revelation. It is within, woven into the core of existence, indistinguishable from the seeker's own consciousness. This is the fifth rung of the ladder of lights, the stage where separation dissolves, where the boundaries between self and the divine collapse into nothing. For so long, the journey has been one of ascent, of climbing toward something beyond, something greater. The seeker has searched, has struggled, has shed their illusions and endured the fire of transformation, and now, at the threshold of unity, a great and humbling realization dawns. The destination was never beyond them, it was always within. The divine has never been distant, it has never been hidden, it has only been waiting for the seeker to become still enough, clear enough, empty enough to perceive it fully. In that perception, something extraordinary occurs. the I begins to dissolve, not in the way one loses oneself in sleep or in forgetfulness, but in a way that is more awake, more alive than anything before. The rigid identity that once seemed so real, the name, the history, the roles played in the world, becomes transparent, like mist in the morning sun. What remains is not nothingness, but everythingness. A vast, boundless awareness that is no longer confined to the body, no longer limited to a single point of consciousness. And in that state there is a knowing, not a thought, not a belief, but a direct, unshakable experience. I am that. It is the truth that has been whispered in every mystical tradition. The Vedantic sages who declared Tattvamasi, thou art that. The Sufi poets dissolved into the love of the beloved. The Gnostic initiates spoke of the return to the pleroma, the fullness of divine being. The Hermetic teaching that the all is mind, and that we are but ripples in its infinite ocean. To reach this point is to understand beyond words that the divine is not an external force, not something separate or above. It is the very fabric of existence. It is the breath, the pulse, the thought before thought. It is the silent presence behind every moment of life, the hidden thread connecting all things. And in this unity, there is no fear. For what is there to fear when one knows they are eternal, when they have seen beyond the illusion of time, beyond the falsehood of death? The body may wither, the world may change, but the essence remains, untouched, unbreakable. The seeker, now more than a seeker, realizes they were never truly seeking. They were only remembering. The waves of existence may still rise and fall, but now they are seen for what they are. Movements of the One, expressions of the same divine presence, joy and sorrow, birth and death, expansion and contraction, all part of the endless dance, the rhythm of creation itself. And yet, even in this state of unity, something calls. For while it would be easy to remain here, suspended in bliss, detached from the world, the true path does not end in isolation. The ladder of lights is not meant to be climbed only for oneself. The ascent is not complete until the wisdom gained is brought back, until the light is shared with those who still struggle in the dream. This is the paradox of enlightenment. Just as the seeker vanishes into the divine, they are called to return to the world, not as they once were, but as something new. A guide, a light, a living embodiment of the unity they have found. And so, with infinite love, with a heart that now beats as one with the universe itself, they take the next step. The journey continues. Chapter 7. The Sixth Rung, The Return. The great illusion is shattered. The seeker has seen beyond the veil, touched the infinite, dissolved into the divine. In that state of unity, there was no separation, no self and other, no longing or lack. It was the fullness of being, the final truth whispered by mystics, the hidden teaching buried beneath symbols and allegories. And yet, something remains. A call, a pull, a knowing that, as much as the soul has ascended, the journey is not complete. There is still one step left to take. The seeker has reached a crossroads. For many, the temptation arises to remain in the heights, to withdraw into the stillness, to detach from the shifting world of form and simply be. And why not? After all, the struggles of life now seem distant, the illusions of the material world transparent, like shadows on a wall. The attachments that once bound them have been severed, and the fears that once held them captive have dissolved into nothing. But this is not the end. The final step of the true journey is not to remain in transcendence, but to return. This is the teaching of the Bodhisattvas, those enlightened beings who, standing at the gates of nirvana, choose instead to turn back, to descend once more into the world, not as those who are lost, but as those who carry the light. It is the meaning behind the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, the understanding that heaven and earth are not separate realms, but reflections of one another. To ascend is only half the path. The other half is to bring that light downward, to merge the infinite with the finite, to become a bridge between the divine and the world. The return is the greatest test of all. For how does one who has glimpsed eternity walk once more among those who are still bound by time? How does one who has touched the formless move again through the realm of form? How does one who has awakened speak to those who are still dreaming? This is where many falter. Some retreat into silence, unable to bridge the gap between what they now know and the world they once belonged to. Others, intoxicated by their enlightenment, fall into the trap of superiority, mistaking their awakening as a reason to separate themselves, to look down upon those who still struggle in the shadows. But the true master does not separate. The true master descends. This is the return, not as a regression, but as an act of love. It is the willingness to enter the world fully, to walk among it not as one who has escaped suffering, but as one who now understands it. To look upon those who are lost, not with judgment, but with infinite compassion. To move through the chaos, not as one who is affected by it, but as one who carries peace within. This is the final alchemy. To merge the divine and the human, to integrate transcendence into the body, into the mind, into the breath. To become both spirit and form, both infinite and finite, both light and shadow. To no longer reject the world, but to embrace it fully, knowing that there was never truly a separation to begin with. But to return is not without difficulty. The world will not recognize what has changed. To others, the seeker may appear much the same. They will still speak, still move, still carry a name and a past. And yet, something is undeniably different. People will sense it. Some will be drawn to it without understanding why. Others will resist it, unconsciously fearing what they cannot grasp. The presence of one who has returned is like a mirror. Those who come near will see themselves reflected, and not all will be ready to face what they see. And so the master learns a new kind of patience. The world cannot be forced awake. No amount of wisdom, no grand speech, no revelation can make another see what they are not yet ready to see. The process of awakening must come from within, and so instead of forcing, the master simply is. They walk through the world as a silent beacon, their presence alone shifting the energy around them. They do not seek to change others, but by their very nature they inspire change. They become a living reminder of what is possible, a glimpse of something beyond the ordinary. This is why those who have returned are often mistaken for something other than human. They are called saints, sages, prophets, and legends. Their words carry a weight beyond language. Their actions ripple outward, touching lives in ways unseen, and yet they claim nothing for themselves. For there is no longer an I that needs recognition, no longer an ego that craves validation. The journey has burned all that away, leaving only what is real. And so they walk, not as those seeking enlightenment, but as those who have become it. This is the great secret hidden in the esoteric teachings. The end of the path is not escape. It is mastery of existence itself. To walk in both worlds, to be fully human and fully divine, to carry the infinite within the finite. It is not about leaving suffering behind, but about meeting it with understanding. Not about rising above the world, but about moving through it with grace. Not about rejecting the body, but about filling it with light. And so the master walks forward. They do not cling to the past, nor do they worry about the future. They are here, in this moment, fully present, fully alive. Their mere existence is an act of service, a transmission of truth without the need for words. And yet the journey is not over, for even this is not the final rung. Even after the return, there is still more to become, still more to expand into, still more light to embody. The ladder of lights extends forever upward, and no being, no matter how awakened, has reached its peak. But now there is no rush, no seeking, no longing, no urgency. Only the knowing that the path unfolds exactly as it should. The master smiles and walks on. Chapter 8. The Seventh Rung. The Eternal Ascent. The seeker has climbed beyond illusion. They have burned away the falsehoods, passed through the fires of transformation, merged with the divine, and returned to the world as something both human and transcendent. And yet something stirs, for even now, after all has been seen, after all has been realized, a truth emerges, deeper and more profound than anything known before. There is no end to this journey. The ladder of lights does not stop at enlightenment. It does not culminate in a final state of perfection, a fixed point where all seeking ceases and all questions are answered. Instead, it stretches infinitely upward, beyond the limits of thought, beyond even the heights of divine union. The ascent is eternal, for the nature of the soul is expansion, ever reaching, ever becoming, ever rising into new and unimaginable realms of existence. The great paradox reveals itself. Enlightenment is not a destination but a continuous unfolding, for even as one reaches what they once thought was the highest peak, a new horizon appears. What once seemed like the final truth is now but a single note in an infinite symphony, a single step on an endless staircase. This is where many falter. There is a temptation, even now, to believe that one has reached the end, that nothing more is required. Some believe themselves to have grasped the full nature of reality, to have attained the highest state of being. They create new identities around their enlightenment, new labels, new roles. They become teachers, gurus, leaders, figures to be followed and revered. But the true master knows better. For the moment one believes they have reached the top, they have already begun to fall. The universe is not static. It is movement, rhythm, a constant unfolding of creation. To claim finality is to step out of harmony with that flow, to stop growing, to cease the very process that led to awakening in the first place. And so, the master lets go of the need to be seen, of the need to be right, of the need to hold on to any fixed identity, even that of the enlightened one. They dissolve into the unfolding, surrendering not to stillness, but to the movement of the divine itself. This is the highest state, not permanence, but infinite becoming. The great spiritual traditions have all hinted at this truth, though it is often misunderstood. The Buddha did not claim to have reached an end, but spoke of the path as one of infinite unfolding. The Kabbalists speak of the ever-ascending tree of life, with no final destination, only deeper and deeper levels of divine reality. The Hermetic sages knew that all things are in constant flux, and that the highest wisdom is not in clinging to a state, but in learning to flow with the eternal current. And so the master continues to ascend. But this ascent is different from before. It is no longer a struggle, no longer a seeking born of longing or lack. There is no longer the need to find something, for all is already present. Instead, there is only allowing, a surrender to the endless unfolding of the soul's evolution. The journey now is one of refinement, a deepening of wisdom, a greater embodiment of light, an ever-expanding awareness that touches all things, seeing the divine not just in the heights of transcendence, but in the smallest, most ordinary moments of life. For now, the master sees clearly. The path was never just upward, it was always everywhere. The divine is not only in the moments of revelation, but in the simple act of breathing, in the laughter of a child, in the rustling of leaves, in the quiet stillness of an empty room. The great truth is not found only in sacred texts or mystical visions, but in the way the morning light spills across the floor, in the way a stranger's kindness lingers in the heart. This is the final realization of the seventh rung. The universe itself is the ladder. There is no difference between the spiritual and the mundane, no separation between enlightenment and ordinary existence. The journey of ascent does not lead away from the world, but deeper into it. With this understanding, the master ceases to seek and instead simply lives. But this is not a return to unconsciousness. The awareness remains deeper than ever before. Every step is sacred. Every moment is a lesson. Every breath is an act of devotion. And so, the master walks through the world not as one who has reached an end, but as one who has embraced the eternal unfolding of the soul's infinite potential. There is no finality, no fixed point of completion, only the vast, endless sky above, waiting to be explored. The ascent never ends, and that is the greatest gift of all. Conclusion. The invitation to rise. The journey has been long, winding through the veils of illusion, the fires of transformation, the stillness of divine union and the path of return. The seeker has climbed the ladder of lights, rung by rung, shedding burdens, expanding awareness, awakening to a reality far beyond what the physical senses once dictated. And yet, the path has no end. This is not a story of completion. It is a story of becoming, a story that does not stop at enlightenment, but continues infinitely, spiraling ever upward, ever inward. For consciousness is not a fixed point, not a destination to be reached and claimed, but a river without shores, a sky without boundaries. Perhaps this realization is the greatest awakening of all, that the longing which once seemed like an emptiness to be filled was never about reaching a final state, but about learning to dance with the eternal unfolding. That the soul's hunger for truth is not meant to be satisfied with one answer, one moment of revelation, but is itself the fuel that propels it ever forward, ever higher. And so we arrive at a choice, not a grand decision, not a final test, but the simple, quiet question that has always lingered beneath the surface of existence. Will you climb? Not because you must, not because there is something to be won or achieved, but because the essence of your being is movement, is growth, is light seeking to illuminate itself. The ladder of lights does not demand that you ascend. It does not judge those who choose to remain where they are, but it is always there, waiting, stretching upward into the unknown, offering a path to those who feel the call. The first step is the hardest. It requires courage to question, to let go of the familiar, to step beyond what is comfortable. But once taken, the momentum builds. Each rung climbed brings new understanding, new strength, new vision, and before long the climb is no longer a struggle. It becomes a state of being, a way of existing in harmony with the great unfolding of the universe itself. The truth is this: you were never meant to remain asleep. The flickering light within you, the quiet whisper that has led you here, is proof enough. You are called to awaken. You are called to rise. And whether you begin today, tomorrow, or in a lifetime yet to come, the ladder will always be there, waiting for your hands to grasp its rungs, for your feet to take the next step. The invitation is eternal. The question remains: will you climb?